My name is Elizabeth Hart, and I spent 7 nights sleeping on the hardwood floor of my own bedroom, while my husband slept in our bed telling me I didn't deserve comfort until I learned to be a better wife. His name was Gregory, and for 3 years he'd been systematically breaking me down, convincing me I was worthless, stupid, less than human. The week on the floor started because I'd burned Gregory's dinner. Not intentionally. I'd been distracted by a work call that ran long, forgotten the timer, and the chicken had come out of the oven, charred and smoking. It was a mistake, the kind any person might make, but Gregory didn't see mistakes. He saw disobedience, disrespect, and failures that required punishment. "You know what?" he said, his voice terrifyingly calm as he looked at the ruined meal. "I think you've gotten too comfortable, too lazy. Maybe if you remember what it's like to have nothing, you'll appreciate what I give you." He pointed at the floor. "That's where you're sleeping tonight. No pillow, no blanket, just the floor." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, for some sign he was joking. But Gregory never joked about punishment. "Now," he added when I didn't move fast enough. That first night, I lay on the cold hardwood, my body aching, tears sliding silently down my face. Gregory slept peacefully above me in our bed, his breathing deep and regular, completely unbothered by my suffering just feet away. The second night was worse because I knew it wasn't just one night of punishment. This would continue until Gregory decided I'd suffered enough. He came home from work, looked at me, and said, "Still on the floor. Maybe by the end of the week, you'll understand your place." A week, 7 nights of sleeping on the floor like a dog while my husband used our bed. By the third night, my body was screaming, my back throbbed, my neck was stiff, and my hips were bruised from the hard surface. I couldn't sleep, just lay there in the dark, listening to Gregory's breathing, feeling smaller and more worthless with each passing hour. That's when I started noticing the floor itself. From my position lying flat, pressed against the hardwood, I could see things I'd never noticed before. The way the boards near the closet didn't quite line up, the subtle gap between panels seemed deliberate rather than the result of aging wood. A small scratch pattern on one board that looked like it had been pried up repeatedly. On the 4th night, while Gregory showered before bed, I crawled over to that section of the floor and pressed on the board. It shifted slightly, loose in its fitting. My heart started pounding. I glanced toward the bathroom water still running and carefully worked the board up. Beneath it was a metal safe, small and flat, built into the subfloor. It had a combination lock, the kind that required a code to open. I took a photo with my phone before quickly replacing the board. Gregory came out of the bathroom moments later, and I was back in my spot on the floor, my heart racing so hard I thought he might hear it. He climbed into bed without looking at me. "3 more nights," he said, "if you behave." I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. What was in that safe? Why had Gregory hidden it under the floorboards? What was so secret that it required this level of concealment? The 5th night, I waited until Gregory's breathing deepened into sleep. Then I carefully, silently, crawled back to the loose board and lifted it again. I studied the safe in the dim light from my phone, trying to figure out the combination. I tried our anniversary, nothing. His birthday, nothing. My birthday, nothing. Random number combinations that might mean something to him, all failures. Then I remembered something. 3 years ago, when we'd first moved into this house, Gregory had been obsessed with a specific date. He'd marked it on the calendar, seemed anxious as it approached, then visibly relaxed when it passed. The date was March 15th, 3 to 15. I tried it on the safe. The lock clicked open. Inside were documents, USB drives, and photographs. I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures of everything, working quickly in the darkness, my hands shaking. I couldn't read it all. Then Gregory shifted in his sleep, and I had to freeze, but I captured every page, every image, every piece of evidence before carefully closing the safe and replacing the board. Back in my spot on the floor, I opened the photos on my phone and started reading. What I saw made my blood run cold. The documents were life insurance policies, not just mine, but for 3 other women whose names I didn't recognize. Each policy was for over $1 million, and Gregory was listed as the beneficiary on all of them. The photographs were surveillance images. One woman is jogging in a park, another shopping at a grocery store, a third left what looked like an apartment building. All candid shots, taken without the subjects knowing. All are dated within the past 5 years. Then, I found newspaper clippings, obituaries, 3 women, all died in the past 5 years, all from accidents: a fall downstairs, a car crash, a drowning, all within months of Gregory taking out life insurance policies on them. My hands started shaking so badly that I almost dropped my phone. I scrolled to the USB drive photos. I'd captured images of the drive labels. One was marked Rachel before, another Jennifer before, a third Amanda before. Gregory hadn't just hidden a safe, he'd hidden evidence of murder. Multiple murders. Premeditated, calculated, for insurance money. And I was currently sleeping on the floor of the bedroom of a serial killer who'd taken out a life insurance policy on me 6 months ago. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I lay on the floor, my phone hidden under my body, researching the names from the documents. Rachel Morrison died 3 years ago from a fall down her basement stairs. The obituary described her as a loving wife, survived by her husband, Gregory Hart. Gregory Hart, my husband, had been married before. He'd told me he was divorced, that his ex-wife had cheated and left him. He'd never mentioned she was dead. Jennifer Castellano died 4 years ago in a single-car accident, survived by her husband, Gregory Castellano. He'd used a different last name. The article mentioned she'd been driving home from work when her car had gone off a bridge into a river. Brake failure was suspected but never proven. Amanda Chen died 5 years ago from drowning while on vacation, survived by her fiancé Gregory Morrison. Another name, another identity. The drowning had been ruled accidental. She'd gone swimming alone, gotten caught in a current, a tragic accident. 3 women, 3 deaths, $3 million payouts. And my husband had used a different last name with each of them. I pulled up the photo of my own life insurance policy from the safe. Gregory had taken it out 6 months ago, forging my signature. I'd never agreed to this policy, never even knew it existed. It was for $1.5 million, the highest payout yet. He was escalating, and I was his next victim. My mind raced through the past 6 months. Had there been near misses, moments that could have been accidents but weren't? I thought about the time the brakes on my car had felt spongy, but Gregory had insisted they were fine when I asked him to check them. The time I'd almost fallen down our stairs because a board at the top had been loose. Gregory had fixed it immediately, but told me I should be more careful. He'd been setting up scenarios, testing methods, planning my death to look like an accident, just like he'd done with the others. The 6th night, I maintained my act of submission, while Gregory continued treating me like I deserved to be on the floor. He brought home dinner for himself, ate at the table while I sat on the floor watching, forbidden from eating until he decided I'd earned it. "Tomorrow's your last night down there," he said, almost kindly. "I think you've learned your lesson. Maybe this weekend we can do something nice, take a drive up to the mountains, just the 2 of us." A drive to the mountains, isolated roads, easy place for a car to go over an edge. My stomach turned. "That sounds nice," I said, keeping my voice small and grateful like he expected. After he went to bed, I accessed the USB drive's content through photos I'd taken of file directories visible when I plugged them into my phone through an adapter. The drives contained detailed planning documents, surveillance schedules, research on making deaths look accidental, financial calculations about insurance payouts versus investment needed. Gregory had been running this operation for at least 6 years. Each murder took months of preparation. He'd marry or get engaged to women with decent jobs and clean health histories, women who could qualify for large life insurance policies. He'd build a relationship, gain their trust, take out insurance policies without their knowledge, or forge their signatures, then orchestrate an accident. The pattern was consistent, approximately 1 year from meeting to murder. He'd done this 3 times successfully. I'd been with him for 3 years, but he'd only taken out the policy 6 months ago. I'd been on an extended timeline, probably because I'd been more cautious than his previous victims, harder to manipulate into signing documents or going along with dangerous situations. But now, after this week of sleeping on the floor, after breaking me down completely, he thought I was ready, compliant enough, broken enough. He was moving to the final phase. I also found something else in the photos from the safe. A burner phone with contacts labeled only by initials. One frequent contact was marked DR with recent messages about the next project and cleanup protocols. Gregory wasn't working alone. He had a partner, someone who helped him cover his tracks, maybe helped stage the accidents. I was dealing with something far more sophisticated than a single killer. This was an organized operation, possibly with multiple victims beyond the three I'd identified. On the seventh morning, my last morning on the floor, I woke up with absolute clarity about what I needed to do. I couldn't go to the police, not yet, because Gregory had been so careful, so methodical. The deaths had all been ruled accidents. The insurance policies had been paid out. There was no active investigation into any of the murders. And if I went to the police with what I'd found, there was a chance Gregory would be tipped off before they could build a case. A chance he'd run, disappear, start over somewhere else with a new identity. A chance he'd kill me before I could testify. I needed more evidence. I needed to identify his partner. And most importantly, I needed to ensure Gregory couldn't hurt anyone else ever again. I called in sick to work, told my boss I had the flu and would need a few days. Gregory seemed pleased by this when I told him, probably interpreting it as me being too broken to function normally. "That's fine," he said. "You can rest this week. We'll take that trip to the mountains next weekend instead." Next weekend, my scheduled murder date, delayed by 1 week, that gave me 7 days to plan. I contacted a private investigator I found through encrypted online forums, someone who specialized in cases involving suspected serial killers and had law enforcement connections. Her name was Diana Cross, and she'd worked on high-profile criminal cases before retiring to private work. I met her in a parking garage, brought my phone with all the photos from the safe, and laid out everything I'd discovered. Diana listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker as I spoke. When I finished, she said, "Your husband is running an insurance fraud murder scheme. The partner you mentioned, DR, is probably helping him stage the deaths and maybe sharing the payouts. This is federal crime territory. Racketeering, organized fraud. But you're right, that going to the police immediately is risky." "What do?" I asked. "We build an airtight case, document everything, identify the partner, set up surveillance, get concrete evidence of planning your murder. Then we go to the FBI with everything at once, so comprehensive they can arrest and charge him before he knows what's happening." "How long will that take, if we're thorough?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. "Can you survive that long?" I thought about sleeping on the floor for a week while planning my murder that happened above me. "I can survive anything if it means he goes to prison forever." Diana set up surveillance on Gregory. Hidden cameras in our house placed by her team while Gregory was at work, GPS tracking on his car, monitoring of his burner phone communications. We were documenting everything, his movements, his contacts, his preparations. I also started acting like the perfect broken wife. I did everything Gregory wanted without question. I apologized constantly. I made myself small and submissive, and exactly what he thought he'd created. He thought he'd won, that I was finally the compliant victim he needed me to be for the final act. What he didn't know was that every conversation we had was being recorded. Every time he checked his hidden safe, which he did twice more that week, it was captured on camera. Every text message to DR was intercepted and copied. Diana identified the partner within 4 days, Donald Reese, a former insurance investigator who'd been fired 7 years ago for suspected fraud. He and Gregory had met at a financial planning seminar and had apparently recognized kindred spirits. Donald helped Gregory stage the deaths to pass the investigation, used his connections to ensure claims were processed quickly, and received 30% of each payout. They'd made approximately $3 million together over 5 years, and they were already planning their next victim after Mia woman Gregory had started messaging on a dating app under a fake name. The mountain trip was scheduled for Saturday. Diana's surveillance showed Gregory had researched hiking trails with dangerous drop-offs, had looked up survival rates from falls at various heights, and had mapped cell phone dead zones. He was planning to push me off a cliff and claim I'd slipped while taking photos. We had everything we needed for the FBI. Diana had compiled it all: the evidence from the safe, the surveillance footage, the intercepted communications, the financial records showing the insurance payouts, documentation of the 3 previous murders, and proof of the life insurance policy he'd taken out on me. But the FBI would take time to build their case, to arrest, to prosecute. Even with overwhelming evidence, the legal system moved slowly, and there was always a chance Gregory might get bail, might run, might have contingency plans we hadn't uncovered. I didn't want to spend years testifying, watching Gregory's trial, waiting for justice that might not come. I didn't want to live in fear that he'd find a way to reach me, to finish what he'd started. I wanted a permanent solution. I wanted Gregory gone in a way he could never come back from. So I did something Diana advised against, but ultimately helped me execute. Something darker than involving the FBI, darker than a trial and prison sentence. I was going to make Gregory disappear. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies and perfect hiking, weather exactly what Gregory had wanted. He was cheerful at breakfast, affectionate even, playing the role of loving husband, taking his wife on a romantic outdoor adventure. He'd packed a backpack with water, snacks, and a first aid kit that I knew was just for appearances. He didn't expect we'd need first aid where we were going. "You seem happy," I said, smiling at him across the kitchen table. "I am," Gregory said. "I feel like we've turned a corner, you know? Like you finally understand how our marriage should work. I'm proud of you, Elizabeth. You've grown so much this past week. Grown, as if learning to sleep on the floor like a dog was personal development." "I learned a lot," I said truthfully. "More than you know." We drove to the mountains, a 2-hour trip during which Gregory was relaxed, talking about our future, about maybe buying a bigger house with the insurance money from my new policy, not specifying that he meant the money he'd geeked when I died. The hiking trail was exactly as I'd expected from Diana's research. Beautiful, moderately challenging, with several scenic overlooks that had sheer drops of 200 feet. Gregory steered us toward the most isolated one, where cell service was non-existent and other hikers were unlikely to appear. "This view is incredible," Gregory said when we reached the overlook. The valley stretched below us, forest and mountains as far as you could see. A 300-foot drop straight down to rocks and trees. "It really is," I agreed. Gregory moved to stand at the edge, looking down. This was the moment he'd call me over to see something. I'd stand next to him, and he'd push, quick, simple, just like he'd probably practiced in his mind 100 times. "Elizabeth, come look at this," he called. I walked toward him, and I saw the calculation in his eyes as he positioned himself, saw the slight tension in his shoulders as he prepared to act. Then I said, "I found the safe. Gregory, I know about Rachel, Jennifer, and Amanda. I know you murdered them for insurance money. I know I'm next." The change in his expression was instantaneous shock, then rage, then cold calculation. He lunged toward me, probably planning to push me immediately, to claim I'd slipped when he told me he was a killer. But I wasn't where he expected me to be. I'd stepped back, creating distance, and my hand was in my pocket holding the small canister Diana had given me, high-concentration pepper spray, the kind law enforcement uses. I sprayed him directly in the face. Gregory screamed, his hands flying to his eyes, stumbling backward, toward the edge. His foot hit loose rocks, his balance already compromised by the spray, and for one perfect moment, I saw the realization in his face that he was about to fall. I could have grabbed him, could have pulled him back to safety. I didn't move. Gregory fell backward off the cliff, his scream echoing off the valley walls, before being cut short by the impact 300 feet below. I stood at the edge and looked down. His body was crumpled on the rocks, motionless. From this height, I couldn't see if he was breathing, but I knew from the angle of his neck and the pool of blood already spreading that he was dead or dying. I pulled out my phone, no signal, just as expected, and started hiking back toward civilization. I didn't run. I walked calmly, deliberately, following the trail back down the mountain. When I reached an area with cell service an hour later, I called 911, my voice shaking with practiced panic. "Please help, there's been an accident. My husband fell from a cliff. I think he's dead. Please send someone." The investigation into Gregory's death took 3 weeks and concluded exactly as I'd planned. A tragic accident while hiking. I'd played the devastated widow perfectly. Cried at all the right moments, told investigators how Gregory had wanted to see the view from the edge, how I'd warned him it looked dangerous, how he'd lost his footing on loose rocks. The pepper spray canister was hidden at the bottom of my backpack, wiped clean. I'd used it after he fell, spraying it on the ground to explain any residue on my hands if they tested. They found traces of it on Gregory's face during the autopsy, but it was easily explained. I'd used it on a rattlesnake we'd encountered earlier on the trail. Gregory had gotten some spray blowback. Completely plausible. The medical examiner ruled it an accidental death. The insurance company I'd secretly contacted before the hikes, the one with Gregory's policy on me, paid out without question. But I didn't stop there. Because Gregory's death was only half of my revenge. 3 days after the funeral, I met with Diana again and handed her all the evidence we'd collected: the surveillance footage, the contents of the hidden safe, documentation of the 3 previous murders, and records of Donald Reese's involvement. "I'm giving you everything," I said. "Turn it all over to the FBI. Let them investigate Gregory's murder spree. Let them prosecute Donald. I want Gregory's crimes exposed, even if he's not alive to face consequences." Diana studied me. "You realize, if they investigate thoroughly, they might question Gregory's death, might wonder if it really was an accident." "Let them wonder," I said. "They won't find evidence of anything else. Gregory fell because he was standing too close to the edge, because he lost his balance, because sometimes karma delivers itself without needing human intervention." The FBI opened an investigation into Gregory Hart's serial killings within a week. Donald Reese was arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and racketeering. The media coverage was massive. Insurance agent helped serial killer husband murder 3 wives for profit. Gregory's name was dragged through every possible outlet. His victims' families got closure. The insurance companies he'd defrauded launched civil cases. His reputation was destroyed posthumously in ways that would have tortured him if he'd been alive to see it. I testified at Donald's trial, explaining how I'd discovered the safe, how I'd uncovered the murder scheme. I played the role of a traumatized survivor who'd barely escaped becoming the 4th victim. The jury convicted Donald on all counts. He got life in prison without the possibility of parole. During victim impact statements, I looked directly at Donald and said, "Gregory died thinking he'd won, thinking he'd gotten away with 3 murders and was about to commit a 4th. He never knew I'd discovered everything. Never knew his whole operation would be exposed. I hope that knowledge helps his victims rest easier that at least he didn't get to enjoy his crimes or his money." Donald's lawyer tried to argue that Gregory's death should be investigated further, that the timing was too convenient. But the evidence was clear. Gregory had died in a hiking accident before his crimes were discovered. There was no connection between his death and the subsequent investigation. I collected the $1.5 million life insurance payout on Gregory, the policy he'd taken out on me, which ironically ended up naming me as beneficiary when he died. I used part of it to start a foundation supporting domestic violence victims and families of murder victims. The rest I kept considerate payment for 3 years of abuse, 7 nights sleeping on a floor, and the psychological torture of discovering I'd been sleeping next to a serial killer. I sold the house. I couldn't live there anymore, knowing what Gregory had hidden beneath the floors. I bought a small condo in a different state, started over with a new job, new life, and new identity in some ways. People sometimes ask if I feel guilty about what happened on that mountain. I wonder whether I should have tried harder to save Gregory when he fell. I don't. Not for a second. Gregory spent years planning to murder me. He'd already murdered 3 other women. He would have continued killing until someone stopped him, and the legal system might have given him a chance to escape, to disappear, to start over somewhere else with new victims. I made sure that couldn't happen. I made sure he couldn't hurt anyone ever again. Some people might say I committed murder, that I let him fall when I could have saved him, that I'm no better than he was. But those people did sleep on a floor for a week while a serial killer planned their death. Those people didn't find evidence of 3 murdered women hidden in their house. Those people didn't have to choose between risking a trial where Gregory might walk free or ensuring permanent justice. I made my choice, and I'd make it again. Gregory wanted to make me his 4th victim. Instead, I made him my only one. The insurance investigator who reviewed my claim asked me once if I had any regrets about the hiking trip, about not being more cautious given how dangerous the trail was. "Only one regret," I said. "That I didn't discover what he was sooner. That I wasted 3 years married to a monster." That part was true. But I didn't regret what happened on that cliff. I didn't regret watching him fall. I didn't regret standing still while he died. Because the woman who slept on the floor for a week learned something important. Sometimes the only way to survive a monster is to become someone more dangerous. Gregory thought he was the predator, that I was prey to be hunted and eliminated. He was wrong. And by the time he realized his mistake, he was already falling. The woman forced to sleep on the floor found the hidden safe, found the evidence, found the strength. And when the moment came, she made sure the real criminal got exactly what he deserved. A 300-foot drop and a shallow grave in a case file marked accidental death. Justice doesn't always come from a courtroom. Sometimes it comes from a cliff edge on a mountain trail, and sometimes the person serving it is the one everyone underestimated.